Paul Young didn't consider himself a writer, but he wrote a story for his kids that has turned out to be a quick-selling phenomenon known as The Shack. In it, Paul shares a fictional story of a man whose daughter died under tragic circumstances and of how his world was changed forever during his greatest moment of sadness. The Shack is filled with lessons about tragedy and triumph, and it will challenge the way you view life.
Please welcome to the 700 Club, William Paul Young. Paul, great to have you with us
Nice
today.
to be here. Thank you.
You said there were some things in that opening that you wanted to, to say something about.
Might as well set the record straight from the beginning. One is, it was two friends of mine, Wayne Jacobson and Brad Cummings, as well as Bobby Downs, who helped in the rewriting process. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that created Windblown Media as a publishing company. So I didn't do that, no.
Well, why did you write The Shack?
I wrote it out of obedience to my wife. And Kim had been after me for about 4 or 5 years at least to write something more for the kids. I've always written as gifts. Mm-hmm. And I've never published anything, never tried to publish anything. This was no different. This was a gift to give to my children.
And what was the premise of what you wanted to give them in the writing of The Shack?
A couple things. One is, I looked at my life. I was 50 years old. I'd been through, and again, the shack is a metaphor. It's for the place we get hurt and stuck. Mm-hmm. And for me, it took 38 years to go back to my shack, and then it took me 11 years to go through it. So the main character, Mackenzie Allen Phillips, is really my process of coming to healing squeezed into a weekend. Mm-hmm. And for my children, part of it was, and I think what Kim wanted, was some way to help them understand the big picture of how their dad thinks. And for me, it's like saying, if I can save you 40 years worth of pain, and process, I would love to do that. And I'd love you to be in love with this God that I am.
Paul, I think, life is so glorious and wonderful as God intended it to be, but it is also filled with disappointments and hurts and loss. And people sometimes lose that deep understanding of the goodness of God in the process of that.
And not only that, I mean, there is tremendous pain. There's no question about it. And there are many people with great sadness. And the issue of the goodness of God becomes really central. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem is that, unfortunately, intentionally or unintentionally, we've had a lot of bad theology that has created a God that is also not on our side. Mm-hmm. He is, even as believers, we get the idea that he's mad at us, or at least based on our performance, how well we're getting along with him. Yes. And I think part of that also comes down to the core, that if there's any place to run to in the middle of our pain or our disappointment or wondering what's going on in our lives, it's not to God as God the Father. Yeah. We might be able to go to Jesus because at least he can understand how we feel, but we always think
there's an aloofness to God the Father.
A separation. Mm-hmm. And that's the separation that I wanted to get past. Mm-hmm. I wanted to bridge that gap and say, you know what? He's not like that. Yeah. He's on our side of the table.
You talked about going through pain for a long number of years in your life and then processing for 11. What was the thing that caused you to crash and burn and come to the place where you realized he's not like that?
Well, I always kind of sensed in the back of my mind that he wasn't like that. Yeah. And for me, it was all the secrets coming out. My whole life as a religious person, and I'm a missionary kid, I'm a preacher's kid, I went to Bible school, went to a couple of years of seminary, all of that, and I've served in the church, all of that, and I'm looking, and my whole life, all the way back to my childhood, was full of secrets and full of shame. And shame became the underlying motivation of my life. What do you deal with that? You either run to rebellion when you don't understand how much we're loved, or you run to religion. I ran to religion. Others that I know run to rebellion. Mm-hmm. And so the catalyst was Pandora's box. I'm 38 years old, everything blows apart, and huge personal failure. But it's either you deal with it or you die.
Yeah. Well, God's used you to shatter the preconceptions that a lot of us have about God. I think everybody's got got some. We seem to like to put him in a box and to be able to evaluate what he wants so easily. You say some things in the book that kind of, well, first of all, your characters in the book will kind of bring people to a, whoa, what's that about moment. But you also say some things that I think are startling. For example, I think people would find it startling on page 149. You say that Jesus says, my life was not meant to be an example to copy. And we wear bracelets that say, what would Jesus do? And we have all these little slogans and things that we do that make us feel comfortable. What did you mean by that?
If you asked my children, if you had a bracelet that said WWJD, and you ask them what they would say that means, they will tell you, what will Jesus do rather than would. When you use past tense, you've created a model. To me, the centrality of the new covenant is not that he has come to give us the Holy Spirit to help us be like him. To me, following Jesus, being a Jesus follower, is not trying to be like him, it's allowing him to be himself in the uniqueness of our own personhood. And that to me is the new covenant, that he has actually come to live inside of us. You know, Jesus is the only hope, not only for us as individuals, but he's the only hope for the world.
This is a fascinating and unique story and way of giving us a fresh, broader picture of who God is. Maybe more specific, not broader. What do you want people to walk away from this with after they read The Shack?
Boy, that's a great question. I want them to know or have a sense that God is so much bigger than they had thought, that he is totally outside the box, that although his behavior is unpredictable, you're dealing with an actual person in terms of the three, but the one, even though his behavior is uncertain, in a world full of uncertainty, his character is not. His character is absolutely certain. And that's why the core question is he good? Is he involved? And if I can say yes to those, I've got some place to plant my feet that I didn't have otherwise.
Well, I loved it. It's an awesome book. Thank you so much for writing it, and just want people to get a hold of it and enjoy it as well. Thank you so much, Paul.
Very pleased to be here.